Egypt has committed to reducing the military's role in the economy as part of its $3 billion IMF bailout package. The IMF said in a statement that critical structural reforms to which Cairo had agreed included levelling the playing field between the public and the private sector. The IMF said the policy would cover all state-owned enterprises, including military-owned companies, in a rare acknowledgement by the IMF of how the army has expanded its footprint across Egypt's economy since the former army chief seized power in the 2013 coup. Economists and Egyptian businessmen have long complained that the military's role in the economy crowded out the private sector and scared away foreign investors. Cairo was forced to go to the IMF last year after foreign investors withdrew about $20 billion from Egypt's debt markets around the time of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The capital outflow triggered a foreign currency crisis and forced Cairo to turn to the IMF for a multi-billion-dollar bailout. Businessmen hope the scale of the current crisis will now force the authorities to act. But Sisi's regime has previously pledged to reduce the military's role in the economy and privatize army-owned companies, but little progress was made. French President Emmanuel Macron has said he will not ask for forgiveness from Algeria for French colonization, but hopes to continue working towards reconciliation. In an interview for Le Point magazine, Macron said, "It's not up to me to ask for forgiveness. That's not what this is about. That word will break all of our ties. The worst thing would be to decide we apologize and each go our own way. Work on memory and history isn't a settling of all accounts." France's 100-year colonization of Algeria and the viciously fought war for independence left deep scars which Macron has prodded and soothed over throughout his political career. In 2017, then presidential candidate Macron dubbed the French occupation a crime against humanity. A report he commissioned from an historian recommended in 2020 further moves to reconcile the two countries, while ruling out repentance and apologies. Macron has also questioned whether Algeria existed as a nation before being colonized by France, drawing an angry response from Algiers. Algeria and France maintain ties through immigration, involvement in the independence conflict, and post-war repatriations of French settlers, touching more than 10 million people living in France today. Almost 60,000 people have died of COVID in China in the past 5 weeks, authorities have admitted. China is in the grip of a major wave of the virus after abruptly lifting its zero COVID policy restrictions in December, with some major cities estimating between 70% and 90% of their populations have been infected. Reports show long queues at morgues and crematoriums due to high death toll, but authorities only officially recorded a few dozen COVID-19 deaths. Chinese authorities for long took credit for their harsh lockdown, as the West reeled from the COVID deaths back in 2020. But the harsh lockdown saw protests spread across the country due to the death of 10 people in December, as their building fire exits were welded shut due to COVID measures. As protests spread across the country, Chinese authorities eased the restrictions, but this has now led to China to face what many Western nations faced back in early 2020. This will have a major impact on the Chinese economy and its manufacturing industry, which supplies much of the world.